They say love conquers all, but what happens when love faces a fierce rival, like a mother's stern disapproval or the shadow of a painful past? This is my story, a journey of a single mother who dared to love again, only to realize the path to happiness is filled with trials. It's a story of emotions running high, battling judgment, and building a new beginning, all while creating a family rooted in Brecken and strength. My name is Lilia, a 42-year-old single mother and a graphic designer living in the heart of bustling New York City. My life revolves around my 12-year-old son, Lennox, who fills every corner of our cozy apartment with laughter and love. Though it's just the two of us, our bond is unbreakable, and his joy is the heartbeat of my world. Everything changed a few years ago when tragedy struck. My husband, David, was taken from us in a car accident, leaving a void that can never truly be filled. I still remember that night as if it happened yesterday. I was working late at the office, consumed by the final touches of an important presentation. David called me several times, but I was too focused to pick up. When I finally left the office and arrived home that night, I was greeted by a police officer standing on my doorstep. "Ma'am, your husband has been in an accident," the officer said calmly, but the weight of his words shattered my entire world. That moment, the loss, and the helplessness still haunt me. The pain of losing David lingers, but life has forced me to move forward. I carry his memory with me every day, hand in hand with Lennox. Even though Lennox may not fully understand what it means to lose his father, I promised myself I would love him enough for both David and me. "Hey, Mom, what's for dinner tonight?" Lennox calls out, tossing his school bag onto the floor, like he does every day. "What's your special request tonight?" I ask with a knowing smile, already predicting his answer. "Mac and cheese. Your famous one," Lennox exclaims excitedly, running into the kitchen and handing me an apron like it's part of a sacred ritual. These moments are my favorite, cooking together, laughing, and listening to Lennox talk about his day at school. His stories about friends, teachers, and playground adventures bring a warmth to my heart that nothing else can. In these moments, I feel the weight of my responsibilities lift, even if just for a while. After dinner, we settle in for our evening routine, watching TV, playing board games, or reading stories before bed. It's a simple tradition, but one I cherish deeply. I tuck Lennox into bed, kiss his forehead, and whisper, "Sweet dreams, my little champ." He drifts off to sleep with a contented smile, and I quietly return to my work. Late nights are my time. With a cup of coffee by my side, I dive into design projects, grateful for the flexibility of working from home. Juggling a career and motherhood isn't easy, but it's worth every challenge. Weekends are our special time together, whether it's a shopping trip, a picnic in the park, or simply enjoying each other's company at home. Money is sometimes tight, and time feels stretched thin, but making memories with Lennox is what matters most. Life hasn't been kind, but Lennox's bright smile gives me the strength to keep going. Every day, I believe that David is watching over us, guiding us through the rough patches. With that belief in my heart, I wake up each day ready to face whatever life throws our way. It was on one of those typical outings to the park when fate decided to change the course of my life again. Lennox was on the swings, laughing as he soared higher and higher. I sat on a nearby bench, trying to respond to work emails on my phone. Suddenly, I looked up and saw Lennox losing his grip on the swing. "Lennox!" I shouted, jumping to my feet and rushing toward him. But before I could reach him, a man appeared out of nowhere and caught him just in time. "Are you okay, buddy?" the man asked gently, helping Lennox down from the swing. Relief washed over me as I hurried over. "Thank you so much," I said, catching my breath. "Don't mention it." "No scratches, right?" he replied with a warm smile. He looked to be in his early 32s, with a kind face and a calm, reassuring presence. "I'm Asher," he introduced himself, brushing some dirt off his jeans. "I was out for a jog and noticed your little guy having a blast on the swing, so I kept an eye on him." "Good thing, too." "I'm Lilia," I responded, still catching my breath. "I really appreciate your quick reflexes." "That was a close one." "No problem at all," Asher said with a smile, glancing down at Lennox. "You've got a brave little guy here." Lennox beamed up at him. "Thanks, mister." "Anytime, buddy," Asher replied, winking at Lennox before turning back to me. As we settled onto the park bench, conversation flowed naturally. Asher told me he was a lawyer working at a nearby firm and often came to the park for a jog after work. I found myself sharing my story, explaining how I was balancing life as a single mom while working from home as a graphic designer. Something about Asher's easygoing nature made me feel comfortable. His kindness wasn't forced or superficial. It felt genuine, like he truly cared about the people around him. As we sat there talking, watching Lennox play on the swings again, I felt a small flicker of something I hadn't felt in a long time, Brecken. That unexpected encounter at the park left me with a strange sense of comfort. Meeting someone new, someone kind, was something I hadn't thought about in years. It was as if life was nudging me toward a new chapter when I didn't even realize I needed. That night, as I tucked Lennox into bed and returned to my work, Asher's friendly smile lingered in my thoughts. It had been a long time since I met someone who made me feel seen, not just as a mom, but as Lilia, a woman with dreams, fears, and Breckens. The road ahead was uncertain, but something inside me whispered that this encounter wasn't just a coincidence. Life was giving me a nudge, reminding me that even after loss, love can find its way back into our hearts. All we have to do is be open to it. And for the first time in years, I felt ready to see where this road might lead. I told Asher more about David that day, and he listened closely, his eyes filled with understanding. Every word I spoke seemed to matter to him, and it felt comforting to open up. "You're an incredibly strong woman, Lilia," Asher said softly. "Balancing work and being a mom on your own is truly inspiring." His kind words warmed my heart in a way I hadn't felt in a very long time. I glanced at my watch and realized the sun had already dipped below the horizon. "Oh no, it's getting late. We should head home," I said, rising from the bench. Asher stood with me, his expression sincere. "Lilia, I'd really love to see you again," he said, his voice warm but serious. "Maybe the three of us could have dinner sometime?" His invitation surprised me, and I paused, unsure how to respond. Before I could say a word, Lennox jumped in with excitement. "Yes, Mom. Let's go eat with him." His enthusiasm was infectious, and I couldn't help but smile. "All right," I said, giving in to both their eager faces. A few days later, we went out for dinner at a cozy little Italian restaurant in the neighborhood. Asher brought a small storybook as a gift for Lennox, which won him instant points with my son. Throughout the evening, Asher asked thoughtful questions about my life, my work, and even my dreams. His interest felt genuine, and I found myself relaxing more with each passing moment. It was as if everything had fallen into place, like we belonged together. These dinners soon became part of our routine, and with every meal we shared, Asher and I grew closer. His kindness slowly mended the pieces of my broken heart, and I began to feel something I hadn't in years: happiness. It was a joy I thought had been buried with David, but Asher showed me that life could surprise us when we least expect it. One unforgettable afternoon, Asher took Lennox and me to the zoo. Watching Lennox squeal with joy at the sight of the lions made my heart swell. As I stood there, lost in the moment, Asher gently reached for my hand. I looked up, and he smiled at me with that Lennox tender warmth that had drawn me in from the start. "Lilia," he began softly, "you and Lennox have brought so much joy into my life. I want to be by your side. Always, both of you." Tears welled in my eyes as his words settled in my heart. "Asher," I whispered, my voice trembling with emotion, "you make me happier than I ever thought I could be again." I leaned into his embrace, feeling a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. As our relationship deepened, Asher shared more about his family, especially his mother, Talia. He often spoke of her with admiration, how she was a retired professor from a prestigious university, a brilliant woman he clearly respected. Asher visited her regularly, and it was clear that she held an important place in his life. "I'd love for you to meet my mom," Asher suggested one evening over dinner. "I've told her all about you, and she's looking forward to meeting you." Though a flutter of nerves stirred in my chest at the thought, I knew my feelings for Asher were worth facing any challenge. Okay, I agreed, trying to push my worries aside. This weekend sounds perfect. When the day arrived, Asher, Lennox, and I made our way to Talia's house. As we stood at her doorstep, waiting for her to answer the door, my heart raced. The door opened to reveal an elegantly poised woman, her posture straight and her gaze sharp. "Hello, Mrs. Miller. I'm Lilia," I greeted her warmly, offering a box of gourmet treats as a gift. Talia's expression remained unreadable, her response clipped. "Ah, you're Lilia. Well, come in," she said flatly, stepping aside to let us enter. Her home was immaculate, every cushion perfectly placed, every surface polished to perfection. We settled onto the living room sofa, with me sitting between Asher and Talia. I could feel her eyes studying me, her gaze as cold as her perfectly organized surroundings. "Asher tells me you're a single mother and that you work from home as a designer. Is that right?" she asked, her voice sharp and assessing. "Yes, that's correct," I replied, doing my best to sound upbeat. "I'm fortunate to have a career that lets me balance work and raising Lennox." Talia's lips pressed into a thin line. "Working from home," she muttered, her tone laced with skepticism. "I wonder how stable that really is. I reckon you're not planning to rely on Asher." "Mom, that's not fair," Asher interjected, his voice calm but firm. "Lilia does an amazing job raising Lennox and supporting herself." Talia's expression didn't soften. Her gaze drifted to Lennox, who was sitting quietly next to me, trying to stay out of the tense conversation. "Grandma, will you play with me?" Lennox asked sweetly, hoping to win her over. Talia's reply was ice cold. "I am not your grandmother," she said curtly, turning her attention away from him. The rest of the afternoon felt like an endurance test. Talia's questions came one after another, each more probing than the last. "Did you attend university?" she asked, her tone critical. "Raising a child on your own, it must be hard on him, don't you think?" I answered each question as gracefully as I could, but her disapproval was palpable. It felt like no matter what I said, I couldn't break through her icy exterior. Asher tried his best to defend me, but Talia remained unyielding, her judgment hanging in the air like a storm cloud. Later that evening, as Asher drove me home, I let out a heavy sigh. "Asher, I'm really sorry. Your mother clearly doesn't approve of me." "Don't worry about her," Asher said, squeezing my hand reassuringly. "She just needs some time. She'll come around eventually." Despite his comforting words, doubt gnawed at me. Meeting Talia had felt like a setback, a reminder that love isn't always easy. But Asher's unwavering support gave me Brecken. Maybe, just maybe, love could find a way. Even in the face of disapproval, I tried to smile back at Asher, but Talia's disapproval lingered in my mind, casting a shadow over the future I had imagined with him. As our relationship grew more serious, conversations about marriage naturally followed. However, Talia's disapproval continued to loom over us, threatening to disrupt our happiness. One evening, Asher invited me to dinner at a cozy restaurant, but something about him seemed off. His usual playful energy was replaced by a quiet seriousness, and I couldn't help but feel uneasy. After we were seated, Asher reached across the table, taking my hands in his. His expression was filled with concern, but his gaze was steady. "Lilia, when I'm with you, everything feels right," he began softly. "The world is brighter, and being with you gives me purpose." Then, with a nervous but loving smile, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. My heart skipped a beat. "Lilia," he said, opening the box to reveal a delicate ring. "Will you marry me? I want to build a life with you, forever." Tears welled in my eyes, and I nodded, barely able to contain my joy. "Yes, Asher, yes. Of course," I cried, wrapping my arms around him. In that moment, it felt like we were the happiest couple in the world. But happiness can be fleeting. The very next day, Asher called me, his voice tight with tension. "Lilia," he began, sounding defeated, "I told my mom about our engagement." I held my breath, already knowing what was coming. "She doesn't approve, does she?" I asked quietly. Asher sighed deeply. No. She doesn't. She thinks you're not right for me. That because you're a single mother with an unstable job, you must be after my money. Her words, relayed through Asher, felt like a slap. Anger, hurt, and guilt swirled inside me. I hated that Asher was stuck in the middle of this, torn between me and his mother. Asher, I whispered, I love you more than anything. But if being with me is causing so much trouble between you and your mom— Lilia, Asher interrupted firmly, I choose you. I love you, and my mother will just have to accept that. I won't let her come between us. His words gave me strength, but I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. That weekend, we decided to confront Talia, hoping to make her understand that our love was real. As we sat in her pristine living room, Asher's jaw tightened with determination. Mom, he began, Lilia is the woman I love. I'm going to marry her, and I need you to accept that. Talia's expression remained as cold as ever. You're making a mistake, Asher, she said flatly. Lilia isn't good enough for you. Her background, her status as a single mother, none of it fits. You deserve better. Her words cut through me like a knife. I blinked back, the tears threatening to fall, determined not to break. Mrs. Miller, I said softly, I love Asher with all my heart. Please, give us a chance. But Talia's gaze remained icy. I will never approve of this marriage, she said with finality. Mark my words, you'll ruin Asher's life. Later that night, as Asher held me close, I cried into his chest, my heart aching from Talia's harsh rejection. Lilia, I won't give up on us, Asher whispered, stroking my hair gently. I'll convince her. I promise. His unwavering support gave me Brecken, even though I knew the road ahead would be difficult. As our wedding day drew closer, Talia's interference only intensified. Every decision became a battleground. Nothing was off-limits to her criticism. One afternoon, while Asher and I were at a bridal boutique picking out my wedding dress, Talia arrived unexpectedly, her presence as sharp as ever. She eyed the gown I was trying on with clear disapproval. That dress doesn't suit you at all, she said flatly, her tone filled with disdain. Pick something more refined. I was stunned by her sudden intrusion, and before I could respond, Asher stepped in, trying to keep the peace. Mom, please, he said gently, let Lilia choose the dress she wants. But Talia was relentless. A wedding reflects the family's reputation, Asher, she said sharply. My input should be considered. Feeling overwhelmed and pressured, I ended up choosing a dress that met Talia's approval, even though it wasn't the one I had originally wanted. As we left the boutique, Asher squeezed my hand apologetically. Lilia, I'm so sorry, he whispered. But no matter what you wear, you'll be the most beautiful bride. It wasn't just the dress. Talia interfered with every aspect of our wedding planning. From the guest list to the venue, she insisted on having control. You need to be more selective with the invitations, she said sternly. It could affect Asher's career. She scoffed at the venue we had chosen, saying, You can't get married at some shabby location. Choose somewhere more prestigious. What was supposed to be an intimate, meaningful celebration turned into a struggle to protect our vision from Talia's relentless demands. Asher did his best to shield me from the stress, but the weight of it all was taking a toll on both of us. Lilia, Asher said one evening as we sat on the couch, exhausted from the day's battles, I don't want you to have to deal with her anymore. Let me handle my mom. I took his hand in mine, feeling the love and determination behind his words. No. Asher, I whispered, we'll get through this together. I'm by your side. Always. Amidst the chaos of wedding planning, we also began searching for our first home, a place where we could build the family we dreamed of. We wanted a neighborhood that would be perfect for raising Lennox and, Breckenfully, future children. After weeks of searching, we finally found the one. A beautiful house with large, sun-filled windows, a spacious living room, and a yard where Lennox could run and play. Asher, I whispered as we stood in front of the house, this is it. I hugged Asher tightly, feeling a rush of joy. This is the home where we can raise Lennox and watch him grow, I said excitedly. Asher's smile mirrored mine, his warmth matching my excitement. But Predictably, when we showed the house to Talia, her reaction was nothing short of dismissive. "This house is too small," she said, frowning with disapproval. "There's no proper space for guests, and it's hardly big enough if you plan on having more children." I tried to explain. "Talia, this house is perfect for us. It's cozy and gives us everything we need to focus on what truly matters, our family's comfort." But Talia only scoffed. "Of course, you'd choose a place like this, unworthy of Asher," she said sharply. "You should be looking for something that reflects his status." Her words stung, bruising my spirit once again. I could feel the familiar frustration rise in my chest. Asher did his best to calm her, but she stood her ground, unwilling to see the happiness we had found. "You deserve better than this, Asher," Talia snapped. "There are far more suitable women out there for you than Lilia." Her words ignited a fire in me. I took a deep breath and met her gaze, determined not to let her belittle me. "Mrs. Miller, I love Asher, and I will do everything I can to make him happy. Please, just give us a chance." But Talia's expression remained cold, her eyes hard with disapproval. "You'll never live up to my expectations," she said flatly. "Asher will see that sooner or later." Despite her relentless opposition, Asher and I pressed on, determined to build a life together. Somehow, we managed to push through her objections, and before we knew it, our wedding day arrived. It was a small, intimate ceremony, just as we had always dreamed. Lennox looked absolutely adorable as the ring-bearer, walking proudly down the aisle in his little suit. Watching him filled me with pride, and as I made my way toward Asher, my heart swelled with joy. This was the moment I had dreamed of, a moment filled with love and Brecken for the future. When Asher and I exchanged vows, emotion thickened his voice. "Lilia," he began, tears in his eyes, "meeting you was the best thing that ever happened to me. I promise to love you, cherish you, and protect you every day of my life." Through my joyful tears, I responded, "Asher, I can't wait to walk through life with you. My love for you is endless." With cheers and applause from our loved ones, Asher and I began our new journey as husband and wife. It felt like the start of something beautiful, our own little world where love and Brecken would grow. A few months into our marriage, something wonderful happened. One morning, I felt a strange flutter of excitement in my heart and approached Asher with a grin. "Asher," I whispered, "I think I might be pregnant." Asher's face lit up instantly. "Lilia, that's the best news ever," he exclaimed, pulling me into a tight embrace. We wasted no time visiting the doctor, who confirmed the joyful news. "Congratulations," the doctor said warmly. "You're 6 weeks along, and the baby is developing well." Asher placed his hand gently on my belly, his eyes soft with emotion. "Hello, little one," he whispered. "I'm your daddy, and I love you more than anything in this world." Sharing the news with Lennox was equally magical. "Lennox, guess what?" I said, grinning. "You're going to be a big brother. There's a baby on the way." Lennox's face lit up with excitement.
"Yay!"
"I can't wait to meet the baby," he shouted, bouncing up and down with joy. Filled with happiness, Asher decided to call his mother to share the news. "Mom, Lilia is pregnant," he said, his voice filled with excitement. "You're going to be a grandmother." But Talia's reaction was far from what we had reckoned. "Are you sure she's pregnant?" she asked coldly. Asher's smile faltered. "Mom, of course she's pregnant. The doctor confirmed it." Talia's voice turned harsh. "She must be trying to trap you. I bet she's faking the pregnancy to get your money." Anger flashed across Asher's face. "That's not true, Mom. Lilia loves me, and we're starting a family together." But Talia's tone was filled with disdain. "You're being deceived, Asher. That woman is cunning. I can't believe you're falling for this." Frustrated, Asher hung up the phone, his expression filled with regret. "Lilia, I'm so sorry," he said, taking my hands in his. "She doesn't believe you're pregnant, but I know the truth. Don't worry. We'll get through this." In the following days, strange things began happening. While I was out shopping, I had the eerie feeling that someone was watching me. At first, I brushed it off, telling myself it was just my imagination. But as the days went by, the feeling grew stronger. It wasn't just paranoia, someone was definitely following me. Asher, I confided one evening, my voice uneasy. I think someone's following me. Asher's brow furrowed with concern. I noticed it too, he admitted. That's why I asked my friend Thayer, a private investigator, to look into it. Just then, Asher's phone rang. It was Thayer. Asher, I have news, Thayer said on the other end. It turns out your mother hired someone to follow Lilia. Asher was stunned.
What?
My mother hired someone to follow hers. Yes, Thayer confirmed. She wanted to keep an eye on Lilia's activities. Asher's face was filled with disbelief as he looked at me, guilt written all over him. Lilia, I'm so sorry. I had no idea she would go this far. I stood there, speechless, my legs feeling weak beneath me. Why? I whispered, struggling to make sense of it. Why would she do this? I haven't done anything wrong. Asher pulled me into a tight embrace, his voice soft but full of determination. What my mother did is unforgivable. I won't let anyone hurt you. That evening, Asher confronted his mother, anger clear in his voice. Mom, why did you have Lilia followed? She's done nothing to deserve this. Talia remained defiant. I had to know if she was really pregnant, she said coldly. That woman can't be trusted. Asher's voice shook with emotion. Your prejudice is tearing us apart. Lilia is my wife and the mother of my child.
You need to accept that.
But Talia's expression never softened. I will never accept her, she said firmly. She'll ruin your life, Asher. Despite her unrelenting disapproval, Asher and I clung to the Brecken that we could somehow mend things. As my pregnancy progressed into the second trimester and the baby's health remained strong, Asher suggested inviting Talia over for dinner. Lilia, this could be our chance, Asher said with a glimmer of Brecken. Let's show her your kind heart. I nodded, willing to try. You're right, Asher. I want to make things better for Lennox, the baby, and for us. That evening, I Breckened for a peaceful family dinner as we welcomed Talia into our home. I greeted her warmly at the door, forcing a smile. Thank you so much for coming, Mrs. Miller. Let's enjoy this dinner together, I said, trying to set a positive tone. But Talia's expression remained cold and distant. I'm sure you're up to something, she muttered as she stepped inside, her words sharp enough to pierce the air. Throughout the meal, Talia's interrogations continued relentlessly. Are you really pregnant, Lilia? She asked, narrowing her eyes as if she could see through me. You barely even look like you're showing. I fought to stay calm, though her words stung. Yes, the baby is healthy and growing well. It just isn't noticeable yet, I replied, hoping to ease her suspicions. Talia's lips curled with disdain. I wonder if you're lying, she said, her voice dripping with accusation. Trying to trick Asher into giving you money. Her cruel words cut deeper than I expected, but I held my composure. Before I could respond, Asher slammed his hand on the table, his voice filled with anger. Mom, stop it. Quit insulting Lilia. The room fell into an uneasy silence, and the rest of the dinner passed in tension. By the end of it, I was emotionally drained. I needed a moment to breathe. Asher, I'm going to step outside for some fresh air, I whispered, heading toward the backyard. I stood by the pool, gazing at the still water, trying to calm the storm of emotions swirling inside me. Suddenly, I heard Talia's footsteps behind me. I will never approve of you, Lilia, she said coldly, her voice sharp and unforgiving. You're not good enough for Asher. I turned to face her, my voice soft but pleading. Mrs. Miller, I love Asher with all my heart. Please, give us a chance. Without warning, Talia's face twisted with rage. I've had enough of your lies, she screamed, grabbing my shoulders and shoving me forcefully. The unexpected push sent me tumbling backward into the pool. The cold water closed in around me as I struggled to stay conscious. My mind raced with one desperate thought. I had to protect the baby. When I opened my eyes, the bright lights of a hospital room blurred my vision. My body ached, but I was alive. As I tried to move, I saw Asher sitting beside me, his eyes filled with relief. Lilia, you're awake, he said softly, taking my hand. Where am I? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. You're in the ICU, Asher explained gently. My mom, she pushed you into the pool. You were unconscious, and the doctors had to perform an emergency C-section to save you and the baby. My heart raced in panic. Is the baby okay? I gasped. Asher's smile was soft and full of love. He's safe. He's a healthy baby boy. Tears of relief streamed down my face. I want to see him, I whispered. Asher pressed the nurse's call button, and moments later, a nurse entered the room with a small bassinet. Here's your baby, Mrs. Brown, she said warmly. Asher gently lifted our baby boy and placed him in my arms. The moment I held him, an overwhelming wave of love washed over me. His tiny hand curled around my finger, and I whispered, My precious baby, you've been so brave. Mommy is so glad you're safe. Asher leaned in, kissing the baby's forehead. Hey, little guy. Daddy loves you so much, he said softly. The nurse smiled at our emotional reunion. Have you chosen a name for him yet? She asked. Asher and I exchanged a glance, and without hesitation, I whispered, Brecken. His name is Brecken. The nurse beamed. That's a beautiful name. Congratulations. As I held Brecken close, peace settled over me, but a lingering worry remained. What about your mother's? I asked, my voice trembling. Asher's expression darkened. She's been arrested for attempted murder. She'll have to face trial, he said firmly. I nodded, overwhelmed with emotion. I see, I whispered, holding Brecken tighter. Right now, all that matters is you and Brecken, Asher said, pressing a kiss to my cheek. We'll leave the rest to the courts. Talia's trial made headlines, and when the time came, her bitterness remained on full display. That woman is a liar, she shouted in court, her voice filled with venom. She only got pregnant to trap my son. But the truth was undeniable. Brecken was here, alive and thriving. With my testimony and overwhelming evidence, the court reached its decision. The defendant is hereby sentenced to 5 years in prison, the judge declared. I exhaled a sigh of relief as Asher supported me out of the courtroom. We were immediately surrounded by reporters, microphones thrust toward us. Mrs. Brown, how do you feel about the verdict? One of them asked eagerly. I stood tall, my voice steady. I did what any mother would do. I protected my child. That's a parent's responsibility. Asher, holding Brecken in his arms, added, We will face the future together, with Brecken in our hearts. A few months after the trial, our lives finally settled into a happy routine. Asher thrived in his career as a lawyer, and I found balance between running my design business and caring for our family. Despite the hardships we had faced, our love had only grown stronger. One day, Lennox came running into the living room, his face glowing with excitement.
Mom.
Brecken just walked, he shouted. I rushed to the living room and saw our little boy, now 12 months old, toddling around on his wobbly legs. Brecken, you're walking? I cried, scooping him up and covering him with kisses, tears of joy streaming down my face. Later that evening, when Asher came home, I shared the exciting news. His face lit up with pride. Good job, little man, he said, ruffling Brecken's hair. You'll be running marathons before we know it. We hugged our children tightly, knowing that despite everything we had endured, we had built a family filled with love, resilience, and Brecken. As I gazed out the window, watching sunlight pour into our home, I knew in my heart that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, hand in hand. Because in the end, it was our love, our Brecken, and our family that carried us through.